Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly how you respond after dropping game 2 of a 4-game set against the San Diego Padres, as Joe Musgrove in his big years, those shiny years, went 7 shutty against the Mets. Fast forward a day later, and the Mets get right back on track against arguably the best pitcher that the Padres have to offer this season to this point, and Mr. Michael Cain, Mr. Francisco Lindor, no, Slam Cisco Lindor. My goodness, my God, my gracious, the MVP campaign of a season for Mr. Slam Cisco in Slam Diego continues as Lindor drives the way for the Mets in this one with not one but 2 home runs, one from each side of the plate, a grand salami to secure the comfortable, the nice and comfy, gushy feeling 7-1 victory. Spam those W's in the live show to all my live viewers first chopping in live on a replay to the latest edition of the New York Metropolitan postgame segment presented by BetUS, America's #1 sportsbook. Make sure to check them out today by clicking that link down below in the description. That way you too get a 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000 for all your sports betting needs. We got our amazing members first chopping in live on a replay. Happy to have each and every one of you in here. We're going to break down this ball game inning by inning as we always do, but let's just let the initial reactions react, everybody. This series has playoff type atmosphere. It's a packed, beautiful weekend there in Slam Diego for Petco Park. We got Padres fans rolling in. We got Mets fans rolling in from out of town as well. And we saw that when the Mets have really been able to get up against these pitchers, and Cease and also in Kane, the fans are showing out and the boys are riding high. Let's scrap that one yesterday. That was a tough one for sure. Joe Musgrove is still our daddy, and that's fine because it's perfectly fine as long as the Mets rebound the way that they did tonight. Thanks to Mr. Lindor leading the way on the offensive regard, as we're going to break down everything to a T on the offensive end. What stood out so much for the Mets in this matchup? Not only Lindor, but Harrison Bader finally getting the monkey off his back, finally snapping the over 20 skid that we saw from Mr. Bader this season. We're going to get into everything on that, but something that cannot be understated is the continued dominance of the young southpaw himself and David Peterson. Another 7+ inning outing, this time of 1 earned run, 5 hits, 2 walks, 2 strikeout ball. I want to know your initial reactions to David Peterson's masterclass outing against the best contact hitting team in all the National League in the Slam Diego Padres. No slamming done for those boys in Petco Park, but what was slamming for the Mets in Petco was certainly Mr. Smile himself, and what should be leading the way in the MVP race outside of Shohei Ohtani. Mr. Smile Francisco Lindor continues to tear the cover off the ball. I am pumped up to break down everything that transpired in this victorious matchup for the Mets, everybody. And as we currently see, the Mets are sadly still 2.5 games out of a playoff spot as the Braves have won 9 of their last 12. They've had some sweaty games the past 24 hours in which CJ Abrams gifted them a victory in extra innings yesterday. No less, the Mets have to control their destiny. That's all they can do right now, and thankfully they secure a victory. And if the Mets can come out in a day game and secure 3 out of 4 against the Padres, I'm absolutely juiced up heading into that vital series against the Diamondbacks in Arizona. But before we break everything down, everybody, and yes, we do have some exciting news, I am joined by my good friend and pitching contributor on the channel that you all know very well, Isaac Rothman, will be joining me for tonight's show, as Isaac and I will break down the ball game inning by inning and share our further reactions to this Mets 7-1 victory over the Padres. So make sure to smash that like and subscribe button as your first chime in, as I'll be showcasing the highlights here in a minute, everybody. And make sure to let me know your thoughts to a lot of the replay viewers that saw this after, waking up Sunday morning, see the Mets win a late one there in San Diego. Let me know your initial reactions to the 7-1 victory in the comments down below. If you're watching this on Twitter, make sure that like, that follow button, that retweet button. But no, as always, I'll only be interacting with our live viewers that we have here on YouTube. And lastly, but most importantly as well, if you guys are chiming in wherever you get your audio podcast, thank you so much for being here. We have been on audio for the past week or so now. Spotify, Google, Apple, you name it. Check out WardyNYM, and we have the #1 Mets postgame show, not directly affiliated with the Mets themselves, on all those respective platforms. Make sure to check out the audio-only content should you wish, as we upload it shortly after every postgame show this season. And make sure to leave a 5-star review if you found yourself enjoying. And apologies in advance if I burst anyone's eardrums the way that I'm sure I'm going to find myself doing here shortly. I do want to answer some quick donations that we're going to let it rip with the jingle. Pat W88 says, Mr. Cy Young, David Peterson. We love ourselves some DP with the way that he's been shoving this season. David Peterson now, over his past 4 starts, has posted right around a 1.7 ERA. Not too shabby if you ask me. And we're looking at a Peterson now also that has given not given rather, but the Mets have given him plenty of run support. 29 runs scored over the past 4 games for David Peterson when on the mound. Sign me the hell up with that. Yoshima with the $5 hollow. Thank you so much. PD shoves Lindor MVP. Nunez back, and we love to be masturbators. Love the wordplay there. If you know, you know. Let's go for the series win tomorrow. You said it, boss. Emerson, great friend. I got a $400 signed jersey of a future Hall of Famer. That is awesome, Emerson. I'm glad he got it with Mr. Smile himself, everybody. And I'm smiling cheek to cheek the same way that you guys are too, as we now let it rip with the one, the only, the official WardyNYM post-game jingle. Isaac, how are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you, Wardy?
I'm fantastic, if you couldn't tell. Obviously juiced up after a big victory like this one. And Isaac, I got to ask you, you've been jonesing to come on here the past couple of days. I said, you know what, as long as the Mets win tonight and everything rolls well, we'll make it happen. And I know you're really excited to get into this because you have been as much of a David Peterson advocate as they come so far this season since returning from injury. So before getting into any of the numbers or anything like that, as we will spend great time in today's show doing exactly that, I just want to hear from you, Isaac. What is the initial reaction after seeing David Peterson do what he did tonight and the Mets putting up 7 runs here against the Padres?
It's awesome. David Peterson is so good. It makes me very happy. He just goes out there. He doesn't have the most overpowering stuff. He just mows through lineups. He's efficient. And considering the injury of Kodai Senga, he's just been an absolute lifesaver for this Mets team.
Oh my goodness. It's a great point to bring up Senga because we all got that taste of brilliance, the 9 strikeouts against the Atlanta Braves. And just as we got what we were hoping for all season long, it was gone in a flash of an eye. And now we have here David Peterson. He's filled that role and then some. Look, could we all love to see the Mets add more of their rotation at the trade deadline? Yes. It was understandable why they didn't give them the prices for most guys. Yes, absolutely. Look at the Trevor Rogers trade that has already aged like milk for the Baltimore Orioles as a great example. Mets were actually one of the runner-ups in that bidding war, I would like to add. So just somebody make a note of there. We missed on that one. But to see what David Peterson has done this season has really been brilliant because, Isaac, going back to when you and I kind of first connected earlier this year, going back into early summer, when speaking on Peterson, we were both trying to figure out, is he more of a ground ball pitcher? Is he more of a strikeout pitcher? What is Peterson trying to do here? And it's been awesome to watch him kind of have this balance each start. Sometimes he has had that further emphasis on utilizing those pitches to get the swing and miss, especially lefty-lefty if he's working that sweeper well, or you have the fastball up, or you have there the sinker that, of course, has worked in his favor, inducing those ground ball outs the way that we saw brilliantly. And this was really honestly what I expected against the Padres. Like, are we all that shocked here? Yes, we saw, again, a soft tossing Paul Blackburn get rocked yesterday against the Padres. Not shocked whatsoever by that. Just sad for him that now that he's out with injury. And the latest on Paul Blackburn, for those that don't know, by the way, is still to be determined. He feels optimistic that he will avoid an IL stint, so we'll see what happens. He's going to throw tomorrow, and then the Mets will reevaluate from there. But thankfully, further imaging did not come back too concerning right now. Now it's just a matter of how's the swelling going to look there with the contusion, the bruise essentially, and to go from there. But we saw Blackburn get rocked yesterday. But to see this Padres offense that leads all the National League in singles this season, hits overall, we also see that they lead by an overwhelming amount in double plays. And that's where a guy like David Peterson, I think, was really able to hone his skills tonight, working those ground ball outs, inducing some double plays when called upon, because we only saw 2 strikeouts out of roughly 8 innings for Peterson tonight. So it was really great to see him work his pitches, dot those corners, and induce all those ground ball outs, along with the Mets getting some much needed offense, and from the guy that's been leading the way pretty much since in that leadoff spot for the majority of the season now, Francisco Lindor. I'm going to get to some donations here in a second, but Isaac, I just have to ask you, are you at all surprised with Lindor's performance at this point? Is this all as expected? Do you think that we have yet to see the best of Francisco Lindor still this season? Because we went from a time where it wasn't all that long ago, a couple months ago, we had Mets fans in here not wanting Lindor on the roster yet again, reacting the way that they did to a slow start, to now seeing the guy leading the way in F4 since batting and leadoff this season for literally, like, we're talking talking 3+ months now is really what it's been. And he just continues to get better every single time out there, it appears. So big question for you. What's your takeaway on Lindor's outing today? Is this at all surprising? And two, do you believe the way that I believe and the way that many should believe he is a legitimate MVP candidate if we are excluding the anomaly, which is Shohei Ohtani?
Yeah, I just saw that Priest on a plane said that you can always count on Lindor to come through and when the game's not on the line, which is hilarious.
He's going to do it till the very end. He has to, he's got nothing else to do.
It's hilarious because he's been carrying this team on his back pretty much for the stretch where they've been making this playoff push. So if there's anyone still trying to push that narrative that he's only shows up when the Mets are out of it, it's just completely destroyed by now. And he's in a point where it's him and Ohtani for the MVP. And the big question is, can a DH win the MVP?
Right.
And since Ohtani doesn't play the field, he doesn't provide as much value as Lindor does. So in my opinion, I'm biased, obviously, but I think he should win it.
just a little bit biased. Shohei's doing back-to-back 40-40 seasons like they're nothing. But, outside of that, yes, I will say this. If we're basing it on overall value of a player from the offensive and defensive side of the ball, it's not even a conversation, But not sadly, just unfortunate for us Mets fans that we have to deal with Shohei now in the NL the same way all the fans of opposing big stars there in the AL the past number of years, including Vladdy Guerrero back in the 2021 season when he really balled out. He still felt short comfortably to Shohei because Shohei was leading the way both offensively and pitching. Not the case this season, so I think there is fair arguments, and I want to know from each and every one of you Mets fans, there are roughly 900 watching live on a replay through Twitter, through YouTube, and listening wherever you get your audio podcast. As always, folks, make sure to leave a 5-star review if you enjoyed. I want to hear and see from you guys in the comments from these respective platforms the following. Do you believe that Francisco Lindor is a legitimate MVP candidate this season? Let us know. Let it rip in the chat as always, and thank you all in advance for doing that. Lindor has now reached a status of 269 on the average, nice, and an 831 OPS this season. I said going back a month plus ago that Lindor is going to find himself back in that 270, 275 range. It will not shock me. Now we're basically nipping on the heels of exactly that. So to see Lindor's dominance is great to say the least, and I truly hope that for the Mets they get more consistency out of him and hopefully the rest of this line, because there's one thing that's been true for the vast majority of the season now. Lindor has been that guy more often than not, even when the Mets have had greater struggles offensively. A great example even was last night. I know it doesn't mean too much, but the Mets had 2 hits, and one of them is Lindor having a 2-out extra base hit of a double there in the 9th inning. Why? Because he has to make sure he gets his extra base hits. That's just how good Lindor has been all season long. But let's get to some of these donations quick, then let's rapid fire break down this ball game. Isaac, I'm going to ask your initial reaction to certain points in the game, how they transpired for you. Same thing for my fans here in the live show. And then from there, we're going to further break down the brilliance that was David Peterson's start today, going 7+ innings of 1 earned run ball. Only 2 strikeouts, but not a problem there at 96 pitches. Now with a 2.86 ERA on the season. A bit on Danilo Nunez as well. How did he look in his inevitable return now to the Mets bullpen, which was awesome to see. And then we're going to wrap up the show with the latest farm report, as Isaac has a lot to say on a lot of key guys in the prospect of the farm right now, including Jonathan, Jintaro Fujinami, among others. So we're going to get into them shortly. Cameron with a $5 donation says, imagine if all came down to the second to last series in Atlanta. I've had that circled for months. It's 100% going to be vital. It's going to be important. Whoever wins that series also wins this season's series against each other, because the Mets and the Braves, I believe, are 5-5 to this point in the season. So whoever wins that series has not only the bragging rights, but should they have a tiebreaker, which very well could happen by the end of the season, that'll be huge. The same way the Mets have the Padres tiebreaker, thankfully. So at absolute worst, if the Mets lose and split this 4-game set, they will still have the tiebreaker on the season series, the way the Mets do also with the St. Louis Cardinals, among other teams. Cameron, thank you for that donation. Yeah, I expect it. Also, I'm planning to go to Atlanta for next year's All-Star game. I hope you have an absolute blast next year, Cameron. We'll talk about next year's All-Star game when we get there, brother. I'll let you know if I'm going to at all step foot in enemy territory then. Pat with the $2 haul says, does Mendoza have a quick hook with Quintana? I think he has to. I think you have to with the way that Jose's been playing, just for obvious reasons. Quintana's been such a liability in this rotation that even if Blackburn does avoid the IL, I think there's a fair argument to suggest that one of Tyler McGill, maybe to a lesser degree Joey Lucchesi, And, you know, if you really want to get crazy just because he's been eating innings this season, Mike Vassell has guys to consider out of the minor leagues right now for the Mets. Not the flashiest names, but guys that can come up, eat innings right away. They may have to defer to that sooner than later should Jose Quintana labor there in game 4 against another soft-tossing southpaw that is also very susceptible to giving up the long ball, Mr. Martin Perez. So we'll see what happens between the two there tomorrow. 1200 with a $5 haul. The show says, impressive, but would have been a shutout if Saint Sapucky would have been in here. If you know, you know. The Sapucky chokes have been going on for 2+ years, and I love it. Oh, well, guess there's always next year's free agency. Get it done, GM. You said it, boss. Thank you so much for the donation, 1200. Appreciate that a lot. If you know, you know. Sean, $5 haul. Let's see here. Lindor for MVP. It's always a great day when the Mets and the Jets win. Shout out to my Jets fans out there. I'm not one of them, but I'm with you. I support you as long as you don't play my Steelers. Then we're gonna have a repeat of the 2012 AFC Championship. That's just how it's gonna be, you know. So I apologize to the Jets fans I offended. Isaac, are you one of them?
I am a Jets fan.
Okay, I'm sorry, but you're so Isaac. What are you? 19?
Yep, 19.
Okay, so there's a difference. You know, when we talk 2012 for a 19-year-old, it's different than a 24-year-old and myself. A bit of a 5-year gap there. Sean with the $5 haul. Thank you again for that. I appreciate that. Dave with the $2 haul says, Lindor, LFGM, baby. Love to see it. Shout out to all you guys. Alrighty, folks, let's continue to break down and get into all the details in this victorious matchup for the Mets as they took this one by a final score of 7-1. Yes, MZ3, you know the vibes, baby. Let's ride. I got freaking Russell Wilson as my quarterback right now. It's fun. I'm liking the tandem right now. We'll see what happens. Been an underwhelming preseason as expected, but I digress. Let's get into this one, everybody, because we saw David Peterson get some quick work, and we also saw the Mets get some quick work, which is awesome because, Isaac, I got to ask you, heading into this matchup, Peterson and Kane, looking like the sexiest matchup between the two on paper this series, not named Severino and Cease. So heading into this, what would you say surprised you the most about Michael Kane's approach versus David Peterson's?
Yeah, I mean, Michael King is a really good pitcher. I got to see him pitch in person in Baltimore a month ago, and in person, you can tell how good he is. His changeup, I think, is one of the best pitches in baseball. He has like 20 inches of horizontal movement, which is incredible. And he just didn't look that sharp today. Obviously, he wasn't helped out by his defense.
No. No,
I thought he threw his four-seam fastball too much. He's better when he's a sinker sweeper kind of guy and mixes in that changeup. And like what I saw in that Lindor at bat when he hit the grand slam, he just waited him out and he got that sweeper right down the middle.
Right.
And that was really, really impressive at bat against a really tough pitcher. Even more evidence of how good of a hitter he is.
Awesome. Love that breakdown there on talking about Michael Kane, Lindor, Peterson, and everything that went into the struggles for one and the success for another. And speaking of Lindor, he led off this ball game with a flyout. Then we saw Marky V get on there with a walk, and the Mets would get their first run of the day because of just a lot of nonsense that happened there at third base. So this was a wacky one. Pete Alonso somehow gets his 29th double this season, but it hits the third base bag, as you all see there. And right as it hits the third base bag, it's already moved from the highlights. You see Manny Machado be redirected because of it. So one, Manny didn't have the best read on this. That is true, the way that he played the ball. But two, the fact that the ball hit the bag the way that it did and ricocheted, that was as lucky as they get for the Mets, because what transpired prior to this cannot be understated. Brandon Nimmo got on with a walk after Mark Vientos, and Brandon Nimmo was probably the luckiest batter out of any batter in tonight's matchup between the Mets and the Padres, as the Padres threw at least, 4 strikes that we saw by Michael Kane, yet the ump only called 2. Absolutely squeezed. We have seen ridiculous ump shows all season long. We saw the Mets just get screwed the other day with what should have been a strike him out double play. Instead, neither things happened. It was actually one of the worst ump shows across all games of Major League Baseball, as he missed roughly 24 calls reportedly. This one wasn't pretty either, but that Brandon Nimmo one was a killer for the Padres early on in this one, as the Mets get a early 1-0 lead thanks to the Pete Alonso double off the third base bag, and nothing else transpired from there as Jesse Winker got on with a walk. Bases loaded situation. JD simply had no recipe for Michael King's slider whatsoever today. We saw a lot of swing and miss, a lot of caught looking. JD did not look good at the plate today whatsoever. And Starling Marte, who did get a single in a second at bat, sadly didn't get it in his first one the Mets needed most. He strikes out to strand the bases loaded for the Mets. They're up 1-0, but you would have loved to see them do more damage than what they did in that situation. Then as we get to the top of the second, because nothing happens with the Padres, it's a quick 1-2-3 inning of work there for David Peterson. Nothing else transpires for the Mets either. So then we advance to the bottom of the second. And in the bottom of the second, folks, we see Donovan Solano get on with a 1-out walk. Then afterwards, Jackson Merrill's absolutely robbed by everyone's favorite player, according to Padres fans. And I'm joking here. Padres fans hate this guy right now. Jesse Winker with a gorgeous diving catch and left that. We saw Jesse not known for the defensive prowess whatsoever, but that did not matter. It goes against Baseball Savant. It goes against the OAA. It does not matter. He's going to make that diving catch and look like a Gold Glove caliber outfielder the way that we love to see. And for context for Padres fans why they don't like Jesse Winker, this goes back to when Jurickson Profar hit a bomb off of the Nationals earlier this season, and during that time Profar kind of had a long stare at the dugout there of the Nats. They didn't take a liking to that, and Jesse Winker, an outspoken player, certainly didn't either. I think a brawl came out of it either, if I'm not mistaken, and since then Padres fans, I even saw them, one had a poster at the game tonight saying Jesse Winker playoff wins 0, my playoff wins 0. So basically saying you're on the same level as us, Jesse, stop talking crap. I thought that was funny. Equally thought it was funny that he had himself a catch that you will rarely see from him in left field all season long for a guy that barely plays left. But let's get into this more here as we're breaking down this ball game as the Mets win this one by a final score of 7-1. It'd be a quick 1-2-3 innings of work that we saw in the third for both clubs, including then we see in the fourth the Mets are trying to tack on more offensively. Will they make it happen? They do. And the most important part about this sequence that happens for the Mets in the fourth inning has everything to do with their 2-out hitting. You see JDM and Winker go down, but Starling Marte gets on as that leadoff hitter there with a 2-out single, and then we see everything unfold from there. Francisco Alvarez thankfully gets on base because of a piss-poor Manny Machado error. Manny, who Gary Cohen has some choice words about, doesn't love his effort, hustling barely down the first baseline every single time, and definitely a guy that, while he's great at the hot corner, has some hiccups because of how elite he is, and things can waver for sure time to time when he's out there on how good that defense is. Alvarez was able to take advantage of the fielding error there by Mr. Manny Machado. Then we see Jeff McNeil hit by a pitch, so we got ourselves bases juiced, 2 out for Francisco Lindor, and I look up right away, I see Lindor's at the plate, and I just looked at my family, I said, this is perfect. There's no guy that I want at the plate right now more than Francisco Lindor. What does he do? Slam Diego is what he does. He rips a grand salami to blow this one open early. The Mets take a 5-0 lead. Now that is how you respond after Paul Blackburn got rocked early yesterday. The Mets had no offense whatsoever. They scored 8 runs in game 1. They scored nada yesterday. They scored 7 today. For going on that math, the Mets are cooked tomorrow in their day game. So knock on wood. Hopefully that doesn't happen, Isaac. But Isaac, I got to ask you, when you saw Lindor barrel all that one for what was his 26th home run of the season, not even his last in his matchup, and the same goes for all my live viewers on YouTube, I want to know, what was the initial reaction to that? Because to see that happen at Petco Park, knowing that you got a packed atmosphere, again, this is a playoff type atmosphere between the two teams right now, and Lindor just continuing to prove why he's been leading the way as a true MVP caliber player. I'm far from shocked that he barreled an 81-mile-per-hour hater right down the pipe to him. But Isaac, I got to ask you, what was the initial thoughts and feeling at when that moment first happened?
I mean, I've never told you this, Wardy, but I was at the game 1 of the wild card game. I know you were too.
Sadly,
in 2022, when Max Scherzer gave up 7 runs, and I still remember watching Jurickson Profar home run going down the right field line and just ripping my heart out. So seeing Lindor just shut up the crowd there was awesome.
It was nice, right? It was kind of like not our complete closure for being hurt as bad as we were in 2022, but at least appreciating that times have changed, right? And one thing's certain, and look, even if the Mets get rocked tomorrow, which shouldn't shock anyone with Quintana on the bump, I'll tell you all right now, the Mets lose tomorrow, Jose Quintana will likely play a factor in that, barring changes, especially against Marin Perez. Very well could be a big bullpen game for the Padres, and that's where they may thrive in this one. But I will tell you, even if the Mets get rocked tomorrow, seeing how they have performed against the Padres collectively for the majority of the season has been great. You know, even with them riding their highs the way that they have been, the Mets comfortably won the first 2 out of 3 games here, right? And if it wasn't for a Paul Blackburn disaster class of a guy that just simply couldn't handle a great offensive lineup there for the Padres contact-wise, you know, if we had a quality starter yesterday, I'm inclined to believe that maybe the Mets are at least in that ball game. Even if Musgrove still carves up 7+, you attack the bullpen, you go from there. I just think the Mets were demoralized from the start of that ball game, from how it began, to see Blackburn go down as early as he did, and there was really no bouncing back from there. How do you feel about that, Isaac?
Yeah, that wasn't a great start. The Blackburn didn't look sharp until he got hit. He was using his fastball too much, which is always a recipe for disaster. Yeah, like from the start, like the first at bat where he gave up the home run to Luis Arias, you knew that game wouldn't have gone down well. So yeah, not a great sign from Blackburn, and it looks like he's not going to be out for too long. That's good. That's a good sign too.
That is a good sign, and hopefully for Paul's case, you know, we will see him back next start, or at absolute worst, one turn skipped for Tyler McGill or whoever, then he's back in there. So Mets are up 5-0 as we're, you know, almost halfway through the ball game here. We're in the top of the 4th. As we then head to the bottom of the 4th, the Padres would try to get something going with a 1-out single from Xander Bogaerts, a contract that will continue to age like milk every single day and will from the beginning, since it has. That wrist has not been the same. He's been taking those cortisone shots every year. My Padres fans know what's up there, sadly, because Xander was a tremendous player. He just has been the guy that they've been hoping for since they signed him to that, 12-year-long contract, I think, which is just, it's something, all right. We see the Mets do nothing on the offensive end, the top of the 5th. Michael Cain settles down a little bit, but that would be Michael Cain's final inning of work. He gives a 5/5. Mind you, Michael Cain headed into tonight's start as leading the way for the Padres as their true ace so far this season. With Musgrove being down with injury, with Darvish being down, now he's finally back, which is exciting for Padres fans. You know, between Cain and Cease, they have really been leading the way frontline this rotation. The Mets have taken care of Dylan Cease brilliantly when they have otherwise struggled against other good quality stars this year, and to see them pounce on Michael Cain stands out a lot to me in this matchup, mainly because I was just highlighting yesterday, Isaac, how the Mets have had continued struggles against really good starting pitching. Don't get me wrong, every team does, but the Mets have struggled at a greater rate than other contending teams right now in postseason play. That's something that I want to make a note of there, especially with pitchers that have been in the top 20 in F4, according to Anthony Tacoma over the past couple weeks. The Mets have, you know, given up an ERA there of just 2, so they really have labored against those pitchers. But to see them pounce on Michael Cain, who has been brilliant pretty much all season long to this point, tells me that the Mets are actually seeing some really good pitches now from some great pitchers, and this could be a continuation for them to finally start to tack on pitching that they need to tack on when it matters most down the stretch in postseason play. You know, if they're going to be able to do this similar at all to potentially Max Fried, potentially Chris Sale, when we get to that Atlanta series there in September against the Phillies and Nola and Suarez and Wheeler, you name it. Like, if the Mets can really showcase themselves big time in those matchups, then they will officially have me convinced that they have turned the page and they have finally found that groove against really good starting pitching when they need to most this season. Because outside of Garrett Cole, when he was first returning from injury, Luis Heel, as he was dealing with, you know, the reality of a reliever turned starter, you know, finally having some reality hitting him as a guy that, you know, wasn't looking as sharp with his pitches and needed some rest. Outside of those, the Mets haven't really tacked on too many really good starters this season, so you just have to hope that what we saw against Michael Cain is a continuation and more to come against some really good starters this season. But the Mets are up 5-0 here as we then saw the Padres get their first run of the day. This would be after a bases loaded hiccup sadly happened. Mind you, we see after review it would be called safe. Higashioka gets on with a single. He initially looked like he was out, but after one angle, it looked like Alonso's foot just missed the bag there. So he gets on. Bryce Johnson gets on with a walk then. Mason McCoy, who just has been a contact-hitting machine since called up by the Padres, fitting for their lineup, he gets on with a single. Bases loaded, less than 2 outs there as Luis Arias grounds out into the only run that the Padres scored today. Funny enough, leave it to the Padres that they score their only run via ground out, something that they have done more than any other team in the National League. And Mr. Arise, especially because he always puts the ball in play this season. Mets are still up 5-1 as we then head to the top of the sixth inning. And we would see Harrison Bader come in at this point defensively and offensively for Jesse Winker, and nothing else happens for the Mets on the offensive end. Pitching-wise, we would then see the Mets get another clean 1-2-3 and work there from David Peterson. Then in the bottom of the top of the seventh rather, Francisco Lindor batting from the left side of the plate this time, batting from the right side of the plate rather, gets all that one. He rips one. Lindor for his 27th home run of the season, 27 bombs of the year. I can't believe I'm saying this, Isaac. It is currently August 24th. Lindor and Alonso have the same number of home runs. On one hand, I love that so much for Mr. Smile, and on another, I absolutely hate that for Pete. This is the same guy that said, I was on pace for what was he say? What did he say earlier this season? 40, 45 home runs. He's not even at the 30 plateau, and we got around 30 games less this season. He's got to turn things on and fast if he wants to, lead the way in his walk year as that home run hitting first baseman that he's prided himself on all of his career. The Mets are up 6-1 in this matchup as we then head to the bottom of seventh. In the bottom of seventh, Jackson Merrill gets on with a single that we see there. That's all that transpires, though. And thankfully, that'll be another clean inning for David Peterson. So then as we head to the top of the eighth, Harrison Bader gets all the hater. He snaps the 0-for-20 skid, gets the monkey off his back. That's Harrison Bader with a Bader Tater for his 9th home run of the season. Mets take a 7-1 lead from there, as we would see with one out, Jerickson Profar ends David Peterson's day with a ground rule double, his 24th of the season. David Peterson is done, but his final line again will be 7.1 innings of 5 hit, 1 earned run, 2 walk, 2 strikeout ball, 0 home runs allowed, a 2.85 ERA for the southpaw for the Mets at 96 pitches. Just dominant stuff that we saw from Peterson yet again tonight. Danilo Nunez comes in for Peterson after we would see that runner get on. That runner ultimately gets to third base because of a balk that we saw, sadly, by Mr. Danilo Nunez, but that didn't matter because Manny Machado, as expected, strikes out in that one. That does it there for the inning. We then head to the ninth as the Mets go down in order, and we see a 2-out single from Kyle Higashioka. That's all she wrote. Danilo Nunez gets the big out for the final one. He strikes out David Peralta swinging. Fastball slider working absolutely brilliantly. Mets win this one comfortably by a final score of 7-1, everybody. And now as we quickly pan, let me show each and every one of you once more just the numbers on the pitching end. How good were they for the Mets? They were absolutely brilliant here. Peterson with 7.1 innings of 5 hit, 1 earned run ball, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. We have Mr. Danilo Nunez here, 1.2 innings of 1 hit, 0 earned run ball, 3 strikeouts, 2.31 ERA for Nunez, who, mind you, had a 2.45 ERA and 30-plus innings with the Mets, returning to the bullpen today, which was so great to see. Peterson is a stud. He's been pitching like one for sure, Yanni. Thank you so much for the $10 high. I greatly appreciate that. Great member in here, as always. Also, I do believe I missed it earlier, folks. Let me go up. Benjamin, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate that. Let's see. Love your show. Sorry for talking smack as a Brave fan. We got Benjamin Watson, for those that don't know, is one of the bigger supporters here on the channel. No, he's not a Mets fan. He is a consistent Braves fan that loves to chime in and chop it up with Mets fans, including myself, every single night. And he has been unbelievably generous throughout all of his support here. Ben, thank you so much, my friend. And I assure you that when I talk down on Braves fans and the Braves themselves, at times you are one of the few that I have absolutely nothing negative to say about. Seriously. And that goes for many of you. We've had a lot of awesome Braves fan supporters on the channel this year and in previous years, even because what I've loved is that a lot of Braves fans have at least been able to handle the smack talk. If I dish it, I have to take it when the Mets have been getting rocked. Same thing, vice versa. And I've enjoyed the back and forth of that rivalry so much. Benjamin, thank you so much for the $50 haul. That really means a lot. That's going all back to the channel. That's going straight to the diapers and the formula, my man. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It really does mean a lot here. Now, before I get back to my man Isaac here in a second, DBB, thank you so much for becoming a member on the channel, my friend. Thank you so much. And let me know how you enjoy the membership. And thank you to every single one of you guys. Goomba, All Things Mets Talk, Camp going up the list. Rebecca, Dave Kaplitz, DMAC, you guys name it. David West, all you guys. Everybody, Dominic, everyone first chiming live in a replay. Even not my members, but longtime followers and priests, etc. Thank you guys for the endless support there. The emojis still need to be updated with the memberships. I know I've been having this major hiccup with them that I'm sure is a very easy fix, yet it hasn't worked my way. And I've tried 3 different times this year. I will try again, though, to make sure that we get that fixed. picks. Thank you so much for the endless support there. Ray with the $2 holla for Isaac. Good guest. Isaac is brilliant, and that's why I want to waste no more time. So before we pan back to Isaac and break down more on what stood out so much about David Peterson's outing and the Mets offensive breakout led by Slam Cisco Lindor himself and Frankie, let's hear a quick word from our amazing sponsor on the channel that you guys and gals know very well already, and that is going to be our friends at Yes, America's #1 sports book that, as I mentioned already, if you don't know, now you know. Yes, at BetUS.
BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook and casino. Live betting and racebook. We're celebrating 30 years with a historic offer. A 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits. Plus 10% gambler's insurance. Get started today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Oh, shout out to my guy Goomba in the chat. Great member with the $10 holla. Formula's expensive. You're telling me. He's drinking that stuff down just like it's nothing. It's so easy. Every single day. Formula. You're 100% right, my man. Thank you so much for the donation. You have no idea how much I greatly need that right now. Please, if you're going to donate, make sure it's for the baby. We need the formula stuff. All jokes aside, thank you, seriously. I appreciate that, Gooba. You guys have been great. Seriously, the fact that I've been able to make this my job for the past number of years, covering the Mets and chopping up with you guys every single night, has just truly been a dream come true, one. And the fact that I'm able to do this now and to have everything afloat with everything else going on in my life, I'm truthfully grateful. So thank you guys again. But thank you also for checking out BetUS. If you haven't already, make sure to click that link down below in the description. That way you too get 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000, everybody. And as we take a look, we're going to take a look at the latest slated games for this Sunday's matchup. Mets are the money line underdog at plus 111. I'm going to stay away for now, but I may circle back tomorrow depending on how my mindset changes. But right now I'm going to stay away from the Mets there in the series finale. I don't want to jinx them at the moment. Orioles, Astros, it's a coin flip. O's have not been playing their best baseball, but I love them so much. Even with James McCann pissing me off as much as he did the other night, I love my Orioles, so we are absolutely going to hammer them on the money line. That's going to be a tough matchup against the Astros, but I love the back and forth. Diamondbacks, Red Sox is a huge one as well. Red Sox are kind of the overwhelming favorite at minus 125. I don't love those odds, if I'm being completely honest. Cardinals, Twins, that's another key matchup. I like that a lot for the Twins, actually. Cardinals, they have been up and down plenty since post-trade deadline as well. I know they're still in the wild card race, but I do like the Twins and how they profile there for sure. That is going to be my 2-leg parlay that we're going to go with, everybody. I'm also going to go throw $10 on each leg individually, and that's basically going to double your money should both those games win. Then that's going to be also 10 to win 25 total on the 2-leg parlay, everybody. So if you're going to bet, make sure you bet responsibly with our great friends at BetUS. Check them out today, and make sure you feel free to tail those bets at the Orioles money line and Twins money line, both of them just to win those games straight. And should they win, then you're going to come out with over doubling your money on whatever dollars you throw on your parlay, whether it's 1, 2, 5, 10, 100, you name it, don't matter. To make sure you do it with BetUS. Alrighty, folks, let's get back into this one because my guy Isaac has a lot to say on David Peterson, and he's got a lot to say on the prospect end. So let's get into everything on exactly that. Isaac, this is going to be the first live report, I feel. Instead of me reading off a lot of the numbers that you're sending my way, you're just going to let it rip now. So everybody, please listen up. Isaac Rothman with the official breakdown on David Peterson's masterclass outing, 7.1 innings of 1 earned run ball, 2 strikeouts, 96 pitches. What worked so well for David Peterson in tonight's outing?
Yeah, so as you were talking about earlier, when David Peterson first came back, I thought he was really going to move away from his four-seam fastball and go to his sinker and slider as his main pitches. Those pitches grade out as his best pitches. They get the best results. They get the most ground balls. But since it's not a huge difference in the grades, it's better for him to use all of his pitches. So what we've seen is he's really used 5 pitches: his sinker, four-seam, curveball, changeup, and slider. Used all of them. They're all polished pitches, and they all get good results. Today he used his sinker 36% of the time, four-seam 25%, curveball 17, changeup 11, and the slider 10. That's interesting. The slider usage was really low, but instead he used his curveball as his main breaking pitch. The four-seam and changeup did a really good job at getting weak contact, and that's what really propelled him through the start, was getting the weak contact. He had a few innings where he had an inning, I think, where he only threw 7 pitches. That's really big for him. He's not always going to be a guy who can strike out hitters. His fastball is really good. It's even better because he has really good extension. He gets far down the mound. He's really tall. So it makes the pitch look a lot faster than it is to the hitter.
It's very deceptive with that kind of length.
Yeah, very deceptive. And then his slider works off that pitch. But today he went with a very different approach. He still threw his sinker a lot, but he also threw his four seam a lot and his curveball a lot. And he didn't use his slider as much, but it obviously worked. And this is what you look for in a quality major league starter: 5 polished pitches. If you have 5 really good pitches that get out to the major league level, you're guaranteed to be at least a 3 or 4 starter in the major leagues.
Especially if you're not only able to throw the kitchen sink like some guys do, like Chris Bassett can have like 7 pitches in his back pocket like no tomorrow. Yu Darvish, same thing, 6+ pitches I usually see he's throwing away. But to have Peterson work them all as great as he did is huge, one. But two, I think what stood out the most to me wasn't only the curveball usage as high as it was, but actually that leads me to a question I have for you, Isaac. How much did the curveball usage really be different tonight versus previous starts where he's had his great success? Like the curveball, has that been the big put-out pitch that we've seen a commonality with over his past 4+ starts, or did this one kind of stick out more like a sore thumb in this matchup against the Padres? Because even though he didn't have a lot of swing and miss when it came to actually striking guys out, he did a great job on it, making sure that he's missing those barrels and inducing the soft contact.
Yeah, that's I wouldn't call it like a swing and miss pitch today. It only got 2 whiffs.
Right.
And he didn't get much swing and miss at all today. He only 5 whiffs in all and 2 strikeouts. But yeah, the curveball can be good at like the start of a count. So like especially with a lineup like this, those hitters are looking for fastball first pitch. And if you throw a curveball, that's the opposite of a fastball. So it will get them catch them really off guard, get them to ground out, pop out, get weak contact. And he did use it late in counts also. It could just be that he hasn't really done it in the past few starts. He's been using a slider as his main out pitch in the past few starts, as he does. But it could be just today he wasn't feeling the slider as much, so he went to the curveball. And that's the value of him having all those great pitches. And when one pitch isn't working, he can go to the curveball like that.
And that's the great difference between a starter and a reliever that, say, has a 1-2 punch arsenal and a Nunez or a Diaz, because thankfully it hasn't happened too much this season, but those are the kind of guys where if, say, that slider is just not biting whatsoever, or that fastball is completely flat, like they just can't get a proper grip, that could be the complete demise to the outing that they're going to find themselves having, because they don't have comfortability. Then you're going to have everyone just sit slider or sit fastball because they know that you are not feeling comfortable about your secondary or your primary pitch between those two. To have that 5+ pitch mix is vital for Peterson with the success he's had. And it was brilliant to see him showcase it as well as he did tonight. So great breakdown there, Isaac. We appreciate that a lot. And as someone who's spoken as glowingly about Peterson this season as you have, I guess now the question as we evaluate him and this rotation, do you believe that this is something that can be sustainable for Peterson? Because this is not a guy that, unlike many stars this season, are now on either pitch count limits because they just pitched a lot earlier in the season or what have you. This is a Peterson that didn't start the year until late as we began summer from the hip surgery that we saw this past offseason, was initially on a pitch limit, innings limit, but that has since changed greatly for not only Peterson, but even Sean Manaea is now going deeper into games consistently for the Mets. Guys not named Mr. Jose Quintana, when evaluating southpaws, have really been able to provide that length as of late. So do you think that this is something that the Mets can get more of and expect from Peterson, a guy that can consistently give you 6-7+ innings out there right now? Or is he going to come back down to earth a little bit, that you could find himself having those 4-5 inning outings that have really kind of bit him in the butt in his career up until this point?
Yeah, I do think it's sustainable. I think there's a difference this year since he's not dealing with the hip injury. Last year he was dealing with the hip injury, and it was a lot harder for him. He was missing up and away with that fastball a lot. This year he's just so much more free and easy. And he doesn't have a high-effort delivery or anything like that. So it's a sustainable, easy delivery. And those 5 polished pitches, those 5 good pitches, those aren't going anywhere. Those will stay with him. So, yeah, I see no reason why he can't be a guy who gives 6 or 7 innings. down the stretch. And that's something Mendoza said, I think. Down the stretch, they're kind of taking the gloves off.
Right.
They're not going to worry about innings count, 2 pitched multiple days in a row, because you can't when you're this far down the stretch. He said that regarding the bullpen and the rotation, I think. So you'll see that with Minaya, Sevy, and Peterson, I would think.
Yeah, no, great points there as well. And speaking of Mendy, that's a perfect transition actually into one of the updates that we heard from Mendoza today, speaking on Mets pitching, this time Sean Reed-Foley. For those that aren't aware, SRF who's been ramping his way back up in rehab that we have seen, hasn't had the best rehab outings, and they kind of shut him down because they weren't loving his mechanics. So to this point, Sean Reed-Foley is still not throwing after being shut down after multiple rehab outings, and they're still trying to fine-tune things. And for SRF, let me put it this way, I will be surprised if he's not heavily considered as an arm that the Mets call up, should they kind of be dragging this out a bit until rosters expand. That could be the route the Mets find themselves going here. With Sean, you also have to wonder with the uncertainty with a Huascar Brosban, Shintaro Fujinami to a lesser degree because he has been in the bigs at all this season for the Mets, among some other interesting relief options that they have there. To just pick your brain here briefly, Isaac, before I get into on the offensive numbers a bit, and then we'll pan back to you and get into all the latest on the prospect end to wrap up the show, because I think there's a lot of keynotes to make on that. I do have to ask you, though, what we have seen from this Mets bullpen configuration. Which reliever do you anticipate to be back up with the Mets? And do you think there's anyone else that is really going to have themselves potentially with the short leash? Because in my opinion, it was 100% going to be a Reed Garrett, to a lesser degree, Adam Ottavino, to maybe a slightly higher degree, a Danny Young, and even a Ryan Stanek of guys considered before Huascar Brosban single-handedly pitched his way out of the Mets bullpen just a couple days ago. So what's your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I do think that Brazoban is going to be back in the bullpen at some point. I know the results haven't been well, and he's not made a good first impression with Mets fans, but he's a good arm, and he's an arm that the Mets have made tweaks with since he's come to the Mets. He's seen a jump in Stuff Plus since he came, one of the biggest post-deadline Stuff Plus jumps.
Oh, wow.
Basically, to say that simply, is that his pitches are faster and better than they were when he was with the Marlins. And that could be something that Jeremy Hefner fixed with him. It could just be pitching in a meaningful environment for the first time in his career. But I think there is stuff there. Again, he's been put in some bad situations, and he did not make the best first impression. But I do think he's going to be back up. He's valuable since he has options and he has control.
Multiple years of control even though he's like mid-30s already.
Yeah, he's
34.
a late
bloomer. Yeah, but I still like Huascar. He crumbled. Mendy left him hung out to dry there purposely because he wanted to see, he needs to get out of it. There's no reason why we should utilize more than one arm here when we were at that point in the game, at least up 6 runs. So I understood the thought process, 6 or 7 actually for that matter, because Mets won by a final score of 8-3. But Brosban did himself no favors, and I think the team collectively hugging him at the end of the ball game was really all you need to know about Brosban if he's going to be here a day later or not. He probably found out late that night, that was a decision that they would be going with after that rough outing. And also, knowing that he throws many pitches as he did, he wouldn't be available for at least the next couple games. So that's another factor that I'm sure played in the Mets' hand with Active Nunez and optioning Huascar Brosban. So we'll talk more on Brazo when the Mets inevitably call him back up. I will not be shocked if it happens again this season. Again, because he has had some solid outings for the Mets, but he has shown an inability to handle certain high leverage situations. And definitely now with the pressure added, something that Huascar isn't too familiar with outside of the success he had with the Marlins last year and a team that made it all the way to the playoffs somehow a year ago. Who would have thought that for Miami and how much they changed overnight the past season? But that's the latest there on Brosban and the Mets bullpen. So now, everybody, let's quickly pivot into the latest on Brazo is nervous. Bronzo Gonzo. Rebecca is just letting it rip in the chat right now against Brosban. I'm both offended and hurt, but I understand it's kind of justified at the moment. So it is what it is. So let's get into this. Let's talk a bit on the hitting, everybody, because as we pan to exactly that, the Mets had their offensive heroics headlined by none other than Mr. Smile himself and Francisco Lindor. Lindor driving in 5 thanks to a grand slam and 2 home runs on the day. One from each side of the plate has now raised his season average to 269 and 831 OPS. on the year. Francisco Lindor, who has continued to lead the way for the Mets in so many ways, both offensively and defensively, has continued to lead the way for the Mets in his true value in Fangraphs' WAR, which is wins above replacement as well. And as we take a look at the latest update with Francisco Lindor after this dominant outing, I would just like to showcase to each and every one of you just what we were looking at with the season for Mr. Smile to this point, because Francisco Lindor in his age 30 season right now currently has himself, and mind you, this was prior to tonight's game, so live updated, I'd have to imagine that the WAR probably jumped at least. Currently it's at 6.4 on the season, which is insane. He's already tied his season best from 2 years ago with the Mets in 2022. Lindor is 1,000% having a 7+ WAR season is what we're looking at, which is nuts right now. He could be at probably 6.6 at least, if I had to imagine, after hitting the 2 home runs tonight. It might be right around, I'd imagine it's right around there, if not more. I'm not exactly sure how drastically WAR can be calculated in a one-game span, so we'll find out. But 27 home runs already on the season for Mr. Smile. We are looking at a total of, yes, 78 RBIs, so almost at the 80 mark already. And we have, 30-plus games to go still this season, and Lindor has been that Iron Man in there. 25 stolen bags on the season already, Lindor, when he had 31 last season. A 268 average right now, and we're looking at that 269 rather, and an 831 OPS. And over a 132 WRC plus, which is the highest he's had as a hitter as a Met. And just for some context, everybody, Francisco Lindor offensively is currently on pace having the best season of his career as well, tying the best season they had per WRC plus back in the 2018 season, where he had 38 home runs, 92 RBIs, and 129 runs scored, 25 RBIs, a 277, a 352, a 519 clip back in 2018. Fast forward all the way to 2024, Francisco Lindor is posting equal numbers on the overall production. The defense has once again been elite, and he is doing this on a night-by-night, day-by-day basis, as comfortable and as easy as he has done it. Man, oh man, am I loving Mr. Smile. He leads the way there, who also led the way in the strikeout department, where a couple guys tonight, it was all the Mets big boppers to be exact. Vientos, Alonso, Martinez, you get 3 strikeouts, you get 3 strikeouts, you get 3 strikeouts. That is what we saw there, everybody. Let's talk about how Hog Watch is ducking. Hog isn't ducking. We mutually agreed prior to tonight's game that we wouldn't be collaborating. I went on his channel yesterday, and he went on mine in game 1. So neither of us ducked each other, and we were only playing to collaborate for at most 2 games this series out of the 4-game set. So it is what it is. I appreciate Hog being a good sport in game 1, the same way they appreciated me chiming in last night when they had nothing to show for it, the Mets, as they faltered 7-0 against the Padres. But Marky V, Swaggy V with a less than ideal offensive day. Thankfully for the Mets, it didn't matter all that much as they comfortably won this one by 6 runs. Vientos 0 for 4 with a run scored, however, has 3 strikeouts, a 274 average, a 874 OPS. Brandon Nimmo 0 for 3 that we saw today with a 226 average, a 747 OPS. Pete Alonso 1 for 4 with the RBI doubles, 29th of the year, and 3 strikeouts, a 245 average, and an 801 OPS. JD Martinez 0 for 4 that we saw there with 3 strikeouts, a 248 average, and a 764 OPS. Jesse Winker 0 for 1 and a walk, a 263 average, a 784 OPS. Harrison Bader 1 for 2 with his 0 for 20 skid snap thanks to his 9th home run of the year, and a run scored, a 254 average, and a 689 OPS. Starling Marte 1 for 4 with a run scored, 279 average, a 738 OPS. Tyrone Taylor, no at-bats, a 241 average, a 682 OPS. Francisco Alvarez 0 for 4 with a run scored, a 236 average, a 683 OPS. And last but not least, Jeff McNeil 0 for 3 with a run scored, a 238 average, and a 688 OPS. That is the latest on that. And Rich, you are the real MVP, my friend. Thank you so much for the kind words. Happy to have you in here as always. And Isaac is absolutely brilliant. We're going to talk more with Isaac here in a second. Hog Watch is entertaining. Yes, he is. Yes. Born and I are very close friends, and we have both equally grown our platforms and really are following, mutually around the same time. And Born is a guy that I look up to in certain ways, and he looks up to me in certain ways. Where, like, I scratch my back, if he scratches mine, I scratch his. We're always having each other's back with stuff. Great guy. Awesome guy. And for those that don't know Borna, he's actually also, a guy that represents me with Hog Media. He's also on the side, what he's been doing, a greater skill outside of YouTube, has been brilliant with Hog Media. Check it out. Giving creators a voice. And, he is, in a lot of ways, what I would classify as, my guy that helps bring in sponsors and on other things. So, brilliant mind. Can't say enough great things about Borna, and appreciate his friendship immensely. So let's get back into this one, folks, because we got Isaac, and before I let Isaac go, He's absolutely salivating at the mouth to talk about these Mets prospects. So I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let Isaac relay to us what has stood out for the Mets on the prospect end over the past 24, 48 hours or so. Because there's some key outings from Jonathan to some others. And I just got to say this, Isaac. Wyatt Young cannot be stopped since batting leadoff. I mean, that was probably one of the best moves we've seen the Rumble Ponies do to their lineup this season. My goodness, keep it up, baby. I'm loving it. Let's talk about these guys.
Yeah, first of all, Wyatt Young is a underrated guy. I was at a Binghamton game a few days ago, and I saw him hit, and he's been absolutely raking. He's a really short guy. You can see that in person.
Oh, he's just like me then. Awesome.
I don't know his exact height, but he's a short king. He's a left fielder. He has speed. Yeah, but he's been really good. Jonathan continues to dominate. In his latest outing, he had 8 Ks, pretty normal. That's commonplace for him in Brooklyn. Just an incredible breakout season for him at only 21 years old. Shintaro Fujinami, let me just see his exact. In August, he's only given up 2 runs through 9 innings, and the walks are down. He's only walked 3 people in August, which is the big thing for him. And he's still throwing upwards of 100 miles an hour with a nasty splitter. And he's been really working in his cutter a lot recently. And more guys from Syracuse. Drew Gilbert has been hitting well. He had a home run.
He's been hitting well. Yeah, let's talk about that for a second. 2 home runs in his past 4 games now. Finding a groove there, barreling baseballs big time. I know Drew's not a guy that is expected to be called up by the Mets this season after missing the majority of time with a hammy injury this year. But what's been your thoughts on Drew Gilbert's approach at the plate and ultimately his future with the Mets as soon as 2025?
Yeah, he's an awesome player. He plays with his hair on fire.
Yes, he does. That's a good way to put it. I like that.
Yeah, he's intense. He's someone that probably won't be called up down the stretch, but if he is, having a personality like him along with Alvarez in the clubhouse would be incredible because they're 2 dynamic personalities that are spark plugs, and they can really energize a team, I think. And he has serious power. He has good speed. He has a good arm. He can play all 3 outfield positions, so a very exciting prospect. Unfortunately, he's been injured for most of the year, but he's back this year, and he's having his first success in AAA now.
Yeah, no, that's been great, and hopefully Drew can continue to finish the season strong after missing the bulk of the time with injury. So we've been seeing standouts with guys like Tom Gilbert, among others. So who are some other guys that have been notable to you as of late, and what exactly has been most notable about said players?
Yeah, so also in AAA today, Max Kranick got the save.
Hell yeah, love that.
And you might remember Max Kranick. The Mets picked him up off waivers in the offseason. He's a guy who they thought could be a late rotation depth option. He had some injury issues, but he's a Mets fan, so it's fun. But he's been relieving for the Syracuse Mets, and his velocity is good. He's throwing 98 with really good ride on that fastball. That's something to watch. I mean, unlikely he would be called up, but that's just another option they have. In Double-A, Nolan McLean had his best Double-A start.
Yes, he did. You were there to see it,
I
so
was.
I expect you to really talk this guy up right now. Let it rip.
I was there. 6 innings pitched, 1 run allowed, 5 strikeouts, and he really has not been good in Double-A. I think he has like a 5.3 ERA in Double-A so far this year, but just recently he stopped hitting, and so he's only been fully focusing on pitching for a few games. So we're finally kind of seeing that come to fruition. And something that James Shiano likes to say a lot, a friend of ours, is that he didn't pitch in high school, and he only made like 5 starts in college. So he's a very inexperienced pitcher.
This is like DeGrom. Like not exactly DeGrom, but Jake, drafted as a shortstop. That it's kind of nuts. So what you're telling me is McLean has no mileage on his arm. So the downside here is that this is a guy where, I mean, it goes for most, but he may need TJ at some point, especially as he really ramps up and gets more innings under his belt for the first time. But the upside is that this guy doesn't really have much damage on his arm to this point. So it's like, okay, he's actually a pretty solid pitching option for the Mets. Because I know, Isaac, where would you grade him right now if you had to evaluate like Mets starting pitching prospects? Where does he land? Is he in your top 5?
Yeah, I'm actually working on an article of the Mets top 10 pitching prospects for the Skipper's View right now.
Okay.
And I had him at 4, I believe.
Okay, so there you go. He's already top 5 in your opinion, and
top 5 pitchers.
Top 5 pitchers in the Mets organization among prospects. So, what do you think is something that Mets fans should be most wary of when evaluating someone like him? Like, what is the most noticeable thing about Nolan McLean that has fans exciting that he could really prosper at the MLB level?
Yeah, one thing like that, for the first 5 innings of that start, he was really good. He was nasty with that slider. His slider is his best pitch. He throws upwards of 3,500 RPM. It's more of a sweeper, actually.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of spin right there.
Yeah, and so that makes it grade out incredibly well. If he was in the majors right now, that would be one of the best pitches in baseball. Wow. Along with his fastball, he throws 98. He could be one of the best relievers in baseball right now. But the Mets are taking the long route. They want to develop him as a starter. But in that start in Binghamton, in the 6th inning, he was gassed. So he was throwing 94 to 96 the entire game. In that 6th inning, he was throwing like 89 to 91.
Oh, okay. So the reality of really not being stretched as a starter was hitting him that time.
Yeah, he was yanking his fastball, and that was when he gave up his 1 run. He gave up a triple, and that was his only run he gave up that inning.
Gotcha.
That in the start. Yeah, but the stuff is definitely there. He was fun to watch. He was throwing 5 or 6 pitches. He had a 4-seam, a sinker, cutter, changeup. Changeup is a brand new pitch for him, and I thought that looks pretty good. And of course, that slider sweeper.
Yeah, that slider sweeper has been the go-to, as you were mentioning, and he's got the curveball in there. So exciting stuff with Nolan McLean. It's been awesome to see how much he has grown in such a short period of time. As someone, as you mentioned, that has been pitching all that long. So it's going to be exciting to see McLean hopefully finish 2024 strong here and be an arm that the Mets may consider at some point in the 2025 season. Because look, I'm all in favor of bringing back a Sevilla, Manaea, whoever. But I think the Mets are also going to give a certain leash to their young talent next season, including Brandon Sproat, who I know that you always have a lot to say about. Jonathan is still on the outside looking, and I think he's still at least another year away from hitting the pro level, but we'll see how much he grows over the next year or so. So outside of the prospects that we discussed, were there any other notables that you would like to make note of over the past day or two?
Yeah, just 2 more.
Let's go.
So these are 2 relief options that a lot of people probably haven't heard of. In Brooklyn, there's a pitcher named Ryan Ammons.
Damn right, Ryan Ammons. You've helped put me on to him, and I can't stop thinking about him when I think of a nice lefty option now.
Yeah, he's thrown 10 games for Brooklyn this year, and he has a 1.38 ERA as a reliever. And he's a guy that pitches with a lot of emotion. He has a good fastball. He just challenges hitters with that fastball, and he's a lefty. That's an intriguing option. And then in Low A, in Port St. Lucie, there are 2 guys. One was named Wilson Lopez. Another guy was named Wellington Arancena. And both of them.
I love a guy with the long first name. Wellington. What a name. I'm going to call him Well.
And both of them hit 100 today. So that's always notable.
Awesome.
And I actually got from my man TJ Stats, who does pitching summaries. He gave me a summary for Arancena, and he graded out very well in terms of stuff plus 110 on the slider, and he averaged 98 on his 4-seam. He only pitched 2 innings, but he got 14 whiffs, so that's always impressive.
Awesome.
Yeah, so like we saw today, a guy like Nunez who kind of came out of nowhere, a guy with a lot of good stuff. By the way, Nunez, he had 10 whiffs today.
We didn't even talk about Nunez much yet, but just exactly what you were hoping to see when he would return. Yeah. This is why I was telling everybody Nunez is our trade deadline acquisition among relievers. Like he's going to top everything in the Mets. Even as much as I like Brosman heading in, he is not Daniel Nunez. Nunez has been that guy.
Yeah, and almost a 70% whiff rate on the slider today. So he did not skip a beat at all. But yeah, just to know that there are others like him that may have even better stuff waiting in the lower minors, who maybe in a year or two you're going to see and come out of nowhere and be these guys throwing 100 out of the bullpen, just absolutely dominant. So that's something we're probably going to see more of as the Mets continue to develop pitching, and it's very exciting.
Short period of time. So, Isaac, before I let you out of here, can you please let everyone know where they can find you and your work and anything that you have coming up here, either for our platform that we're doing or for yourself in particular? Let everyone know, as always, everybody, and thank you all so much for everyone that's chiming in live on a replay to the latest Mets postgame show presented by BetUS as the Mets took down the San Diego Padres in Slam Diego, thanks to Mr. Smile and David Peterson by a final score of 7-1.
Yeah, you can follow me on X, on Twitter at Isaac Rothman. That's ISAACGROFFMAN. And I do pitching breakdowns on there. If you're interested in advanced pitching metrics and learning, or if you're interested in learning more about advanced pitching metrics, I try to explain them on there. If you're interested in learning about Mets prospects that are coming up, or even more general MLB players that are interesting and pitchers that are interesting, definitely check that out. That's ISAACGROFFMAN on X. And also with Wardy on his big account at the WardyNYM. I do weekly threads on there, both a weekly farm report, kind of what we did on the show, but in a written form, telling you about some of the more under the radar prospects and the top prospects that have been performing well. I also do breakdown threads on there. So definitely go check that out if you aren't following that already at the WardyNYM. I may have some articles coming out soon with the Skipper's View, but just be following me on Twitter and you'll know all that stuff.
Isaac, we have come such a long way since we first started talking and you making your debut on the channel not that long ago, already getting better by the second, by the day here. So thank you so much for coming back on. Happy to make this happen. Definitely will not be the last time this season that we have you on. I'm sure we'll have you on a fairly more frequent basis, especially for certain pitching matchups that I really want to hear you kind of dabble in and share your excitement about, where you're going to have those great discussions. But Isaac, thank you as always. It's a pleasure, and I greatly appreciate everyone that chimed in to the latest edition of Mets postgame coverage presented by BetUS. Make sure to check them out again by clicking that link down in the description and the live show here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. That way you too get 125% bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. That is Isaac. This is Wardy, and we'll see you guys all hopefully tomorrow for a series victory there against the Padres. Have a great one, folks. And as always, let's go Mets.